Get down. The boy threw himself over the girl, but he didn't know her dad was the Hells Angels VP. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Ethan Carter never thought a normal Thursday afternoon outside Westbrook High School would turn into the kind of moment that splits a life into before and after. The late fall air carried the scent of cut grass and cold asphalt as students poured into the parking lot, backpacks slung over shoulders, engines starting, laughter echoing across the concrete. Lily Thompson was standing near the edge of the lot, hugging her books against her chest, waiting for her ride. She looked small against the line of pickup trucks and sport utility vehicles, her long brown hair catching in the wind. Ethan noticed the black sedan before anyone else did. It rolled in too fast, tires crunching hard over gravel, windows tinted darker than any parent vehicle had a right to be. Something about it made the back of his neck tighten. He had learned to trust that feeling. When the passenger door flew open and two older boys stepped out with hard expressions and something metallic glinting in one hand, time seemed to fracture. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A scream tore through the air. Ethan did not think. He did not calculate distance or consequence. He saw Lily turn toward the sound, confusion in her eyes, and he moved. A sharp crack split the afternoon. It echoed off the brick walls of the school and sent birds scattering from the trees. Ethan lunged forward and shouted with everything in his chest, "Get down." He slammed into Lily, wrapping his arms around her shoulders and driving her toward the pavement. They hit hard. Her books scattered. Another crack rang out, closer this time. Students dropped behind cars. Someone shouted for a teacher. Ethan pressed his body over Lily's, shielding her head with his arms, his cheek against the cold concrete. He could feel her shaking beneath him. Her breath came in short panicked bursts against his jacket. He did not know who those men were. He did not know why they were there. He only knew that no one was going to hurt her if he could stop it. Tires screeched as the sedan jerked backward. One of the men cursed loudly. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder by the second. The car fishtailed out of the lot, disappearing onto the main road just as teachers rushed forward, pulling students to safety. Ethan stayed where he was for a heartbeat longer, listening for another shot that did not come. When he finally lifted his head, Lily's wide eyes were locked on his. There was fear there, yes, but also something else. Shock, relief, and a question neither of them had words for yet. Ethan helped her sit up, his hands trembling now that the danger seemed to be pulling away. He had no idea that the chaos they had just survived was only the beginning. He had no idea that Lily Thompson was not just another girl waiting for a ride. And he definitely did not know that somewhere not far from Westbrook High School, a man known across the state for power and loyalty was about to hear what had happened to his daughter. The sound of sirens grew louder, weaving through the late afternoon traffic as teachers ushered students back toward the school building. Ethan could feel the tremor in his own hands now that the immediate danger had passed. Lily was still sitting on the asphalt, her fingers gripping his sleeve as if letting go might pull her back into the chaos. A guidance counselor crouched beside them, asking questions in a steady voice, but Lily barely responded. Her eyes kept drifting toward the exit of the parking lot where the black sedan had vanished. Ethan helped her to her feet. His shoulder stung where he had hit the ground, but he brushed it off. Paramedics arrived within minutes, checking students for injuries. Miraculously, no one had been struck. The metallic sound they had heard had not caused physical harm, but it had shattered any sense of safety the school once carried. Police officers moved quickly, speaking into radios, marking positions, asking for descriptions. Ethan gave them everything he remembered. Dark sedan, two older males, one wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt. He left out the way his heart had pounded so hard he thought it might burst. Lily finally found her voice when an officer gently asked if she knew why anyone would target her. She hesitated. For a split second, Ethan saw something flash across her face that was not confusion, but recognition. Then she shook her head. "I do not know," she said softly. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down at the screen, and the color drained from her cheeks. She did not answer. Instead, She stepped a few feet away and typed quickly before slipping the phone back into her pocket. Ethan noticed that her breathing steadied after that, almost as if she had sent a signal flare into the dark and now trusted someone powerful would see it. Within 20 minutes, the parking lot had been blocked off with patrol cars. Parents flooded the sidewalks, panic etched across their faces. Ethan spotted his own mother rushing toward him, wrapping him in a tight embrace. He assured her he was fine. His eyes, however, kept searching for whoever was supposed to pick Lily up. A black sport utility vehicle pulled to the curb, but it was not apparent. It was a tall man in a tailored coat who stepped out first, scanning the scene with a calm intensity that felt different from the chaos around him. He did not rush. He did not shout. He simply observed. Another vehicle followed behind him, this one a dark pickup truck with chrome details that caught the fading sunlight. Two men stepped out, both broad-shouldered, both wearing neutral jackets that hid more than they revealed. They were not smiling. They were not panicking either. Lily saw them and exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing for the first time since the gunshot had echoed across the lot. She walked toward the tall man in the coat, and he placed a protective hand on her head, his posture shifting instantly from controlled observer to concerned guardian. Ethan watched from a distance, unsure why a chill ran down his spine. The tall man glanced toward him briefly. It was not a hostile look. It was calculating, measuring, as if memorizing the face of the boy who had been lying over his daughter moments earlier. Ethan had no idea who these men were. He only knew that whatever storm had rolled into Westbrook High School that afternoon was far from over, and somehow, without meaning to, he had just stepped directly into the center of it. The tall man in the tailored coat kept one steady hand on Lily's shoulder while speaking quietly to one of the officers. His voice never rose. Yet the officer listened with the kind of focus usually reserved for someone with influence. Ethan stood a few yards away with his mother, pretending not to watch, but every instinct told him this was not an ordinary family situation. The two broad-shouldered men who had stepped out of the pickup truck positioned themselves without being told, one near the school entrance and the other beside the sport utility vehicle. They were not aggressive. They were controlled. Their eyes scanned the surroundings with disciplined precision, as if cataloging every face, every movement, every possible threat. Lily glanced back at Ethan. For a moment, the chaos of flashing lights and murmuring parents faded, leaving only the silent exchange between them. She mouthed the words "thank you." Ethan gave a small nod, unsure why his chest felt tight again. The tall man finally turned fully toward Ethan. He studied the boy from head to toe, taking in the scraped knuckles, the dirt on his jacket, the way he instinctively stood slightly in front of Lily's path, as if still guarding her. There was something in the man's gaze that made Ethan straighten his posture. Not fear exactly. Respect mixed with evaluation. The man stepped closer. "You were the one who pulled her down," he said in a calm, measured tone. "Yes, sir," Ethan replied, his voice steadier than he felt. The man nodded once, slowly, as if filing that answer away. That was a brave thing to do. Before Ethan could respond, one of the broad-shouldered men approached and leaned in to whisper something. The tall man's expression changed almost imperceptibly. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened. He glanced toward the street where the sedan had fled. "They were not random," the man murmured. Ethan did not mean to overhear, but the words carried. Lily's fingers tightened around the fabric of her coat. The officer returned with a clipboard, asking Lily again whether she had any idea who might want to scare her. This time she hesitated longer. Ethan saw it clearly now. She knew more than she was saying. "I do not think they were after me," she said carefully. The tall man's eyes flickered toward her, just for a second. It was enough to tell Ethan that was not entirely true. Another patrol car pulled up, and more officers stepped out. The atmosphere shifted from panic to investigation. Statements were taken. Descriptions repeated. The tall man stepped aside with the officers, speaking in low tones. Ethan could not hear the details, but he caught fragments. Ongoing issue. Misunderstanding. It will be handled. When the conversation ended, the man returned to Lily and gently guided her toward the sport utility vehicle. As she opened the passenger door, she paused and looked back at Ethan once more. There was something unspoken in her eyes now. Not just gratitude. Concern. As if she understood that by stepping in front of her, he had unknowingly stepped into something much larger. The pickup truck engine rumbled to life behind them, deep and powerful. The two broad-shouldered men climbed inside, following close behind as the vehicles pulled away from the curb. Ethan watched them disappear down the street, the late afternoon sun reflecting off chrome and dark glass. He had a feeling the danger had not ended with the echo of that gunshot. It had only shifted direction, and somehow, it was now circling closer to him. That evening the sky over Westbrook turned the color of burned copper as Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, replaying every second of the afternoon in his mind. The echo of the gunshot refused to fade. His mother had tried to keep the television off, but word had already spread across local news channels. A brief report mentioned an attempted incident outside Westbrook High School. No names were released. No suspects identified. The anchor described it as an isolated event. Ethan did not believe that for a second. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Lily. "Are you okay?" He stared at the words before typing back. "I am fine. Are you?" There was a pause before the three small dots appeared on his screen. "I am safe. Thank you again." Another pause. "I am sorry you got pulled into this." The wording caught his attention. Pulled into this. Not into it. Not into something random. Into this. Ethan sat up straighter. What was that supposed to mean? Before he could ask, another message arrived. "Can we talk?" "Not here. Somewhere quiet. Tomorrow morning before school." Ethan hesitated only a moment before agreeing. The next morning the air felt heavier than usual, like the town itself was holding its breath. Ethan arrived early and found Lily sitting on the bleachers near the football field. She looked smaller without the chaos around her, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee she probably should not have been drinking at her age. He sat beside her, leaving just enough space to show respect but close enough to signal support. "You knew something yesterday," he said gently. She stared at the empty field. "I think they were trying to send a message." "To who?" She swallowed. "To my family." Ethan felt the ground shift beneath him. What kind of message needs a gun in a school parking lot? Lily shook her head. "They were not trying to hurt me. They were trying to scare someone else. Someone important." "Important how?" She hesitated again, clearly weighing how much to reveal. "My dad has responsibilities. People do not always agree with how he handles things." Ethan frowned. "Handles what things?" Before she could answer, a deep engine rumble rolled across the campus parking lot. It was not a police cruiser. It was lower, heavier, the kind of sound that vibrated in your chest before it reached your ears. Lily closed her eyes briefly, as if she had expected it. "That is him," she said quietly. Ethan turned. A black motorcycle eased into view at the far end of the lot, chrome catching the morning light. The rider removed his helmet slowly. Even from a distance, there was no mistaking the presence. The same tall man from yesterday, but now he wore black leather instead of a tailored coat. A patch covered the back of his vest, bold and unmistakable. Ethan felt a chill travel down his spine. He did not need to read it clearly to understand what it represented. Lily stood. "You deserve to know the truth," she said softly. "My father is not just important. He is the vice president of the Hells Angels chapter in this state." The words hung in the air between them. Ethan looked back at the approaching motorcycle, at the calm, powerful figure walking toward them with measured steps. Suddenly the black sedan from yesterday made sense. The calculated men. The tension. He had not stepped into a random act of violence. He had stepped into a world he had only heard about in whispers. And now that world was walking straight toward him. Marcus Steele Thompson did not rush as he crossed the edge of the football field. The gravel shifted under his boots with slow, deliberate steps, each one measured, controlled. Up close he looked even larger than Ethan remembered from the parking lot. Broad shoulders, weathered face, eyes that carried the weight of someone who had lived through more than most men would admit. The leather vest rested over a dark shirt, and the patch on his back was unmistakable now. Ethan had seen photographs online before, late-night searches about motorcycle clubs and rumors. Seeing it in real life was different. It felt heavier, real. Marcus stopped a few feet away from them. Lily stepped forward first. "I am fine, Dad," she said quickly, as if she knew he would ask before he even opened his mouth. Marcus studied her face, scanning for injuries the way a soldier might assess a battlefield. When he seemed satisfied, his attention shifted to Ethan. "So you are the young man who threw himself over my daughter," he said, his voice deep but calm. There was no threat in it, only scrutiny. Ethan felt his pulse quicken but forced himself not to look away. "Yes, sir." I did not think. Marcus nodded slowly. That is clear. Lily glanced between them, tension threading through her posture. Dad, he saved me. Marcus held Ethan's gaze a moment longer, then extended his hand. Up close. Ethan noticed the scars along his knuckles. Not fresh. Old history etched into skin. Thank you, Marcus said simply. The words were direct, not dramatic. But coming from a man like this, they carried weight. Ethan shook his hand. It was firm, steady, not crushing. I would do it again, Ethan replied before he could stop himself. The honesty surprised even him. Marcus's expression shifted slightly, something almost like approval flickering in his eyes. That kind of courage is rare, he said. Especially when you do not know what you're stepping into. Ethan swallowed. I know now. Marcus gave a short nod. Yes, you do. The morning air seemed quieter around them, as if the campus itself sensed the gravity of the conversation. A few students lingered at a distance, pretending not to stare. Marcus lowered his voice slightly. What happened yesterday was not random. Some people are unhappy with decisions I have made. They wanted attention. They wanted me to feel vulnerable. He looked at Lily briefly. They miscalculated. Ethan listened carefully. He had expected intimidation. Instead, he heard something else. Responsibility. Controlled anger. You should not have been part of that, Marcus continued, his eyes returning to Ethan. But you were. And that means you could still be a target if they think hurting you sends a message. The words landed hard. Lily stiffened. Dad. Marcus raised a hand gently. I am not saying it will happen. I am saying we prepare. Ethan felt the weight of it. Yesterday he had acted on instinct. Today he was hearing the cost of that instinct. I am not afraid, Ethan said quietly. Marcus studied him again, longer this time. Fear is not weakness, son. Ignoring it is. There was no condescension in the words. Only experience. A black pickup truck rolled slowly along the edge of the lot, the same one from the previous day. Two men waited inside, watchful but distant. Marcus glanced toward it briefly before returning his focus to Ethan. I take care of my own, he said. And yesterday, whether you realized it or not, you stood with my family. The implication hung between them. Ethan did not know what it meant fully. Protection, obligation, consequence. Perhaps all three. Marcus placed a hand on Lily's shoulder once more. Go inside, sweetheart. We will talk tonight. As Lily walked toward the school entrance, she glanced back at Ethan with a mixture of gratitude and worry. Marcus remained where he was, looking at the young man who had changed the course of more than one life in a matter of seconds. This story is not over, Marcus said quietly, and neither is your role in it. Then he turned, heading back toward his motorcycle, leaving Ethan standing in the early morning light, aware that courage sometimes opens doors that cannot easily be closed. The rest of the school day passed in a blur for Ethan. Teachers attempted to return to normal lessons, but whispers moved through the hallways like wind through dry leaves. Every time a locker slammed, someone flinched. Every time a car engine backfired outside, heads turned sharply toward the windows. Ethan felt it too, that heightened awareness that settles in after danger brushes too close. He found Lily between classes near her locker. She tried to smile, but the strain showed. My dad means what he says, she told him quietly. If he thinks you could be at risk, he will not ignore it. Ethan leaned against the cool metal lockers. I did not help you because of who your dad is. I helped you because it was you. Her eyes softened. I know. That is what makes this complicated. He wanted to ask more, but the warning bell rang, cutting the moment short. By late afternoon, the parking lot looked almost normal again. Almost. Ethan walked toward his old blue sedan, keys in hand, when he noticed the same black pickup from that morning parked a short distance away. One of the broad-shouldered men stepped out, not hurried, not threatening, just present. Ethan felt his heartbeat pick up. The man approached and stopped a respectful distance away. Mr. Carter, he said evenly. That caught Ethan off guard. You know my name. The man gave a small nod. We make it our business to know certain things. There was no menace in the statement, only fact. Your parents are home right now, the man continued. Your father works construction. Your mother teaches third grade. You have lived in this town your whole life. Ethan swallowed. The information was accurate. We are not here to intimidate you, the man added. We are here because yesterday shifted some lines. People who send messages like that sometimes look for leverage. Ethan understood the implication. I am not leverage, he said quietly. The man studied him. Maybe not. But we do not leave that to chance. A low rumble sounded behind them. Marcus's motorcycle rolled into the lot once more. He removed his helmet and approached, his expression thoughtful rather than severe. Ethan's first instinct was to stand straighter. "I wanted to speak with you again before the night settles in," Marcus said. "There are things you should understand." They stepped aside, away from the open lot, near a row of oak trees that lined the edge of campus. "Yesterday was a warning shot," Marcus said calmly. "No one was meant to be hit. It was noise. Fear. They wanted headlines. But when you moved, when you covered Lily, you changed the picture." Ethan frowned. "How?" "You showed them she is not alone. That someone outside my world would step in without hesitation." Marcus's gaze sharpened. "That kind of unpredictability makes reckless men nervous." Ethan absorbed that. He had never considered himself unpredictable. He had simply reacted. "There is something else," Marcus continued. "The men involved have ties to a rival group. Not enemies in the way people imagine, but competitors with long memories. They believe I overstepped in a recent decision. They think pressure on my family weakens me. Lily does not deserve that," Ethan said firmly. "No," Marcus agreed. "She does not. That is why we are adjusting." Ethan met his eyes. "Adjusting how?" Marcus paused, weighing his words. "By ensuring the next message sent is not one of fear, but of consequence." The statement was steady, not heated. It carried certainty rather than anger. Ethan realized then that this was not chaos. It was strategy. And somehow, his single impulsive act had placed him inside a game played by men with decades of experience. Marcus studied him one last time. "You stepped in when others froze. That tells me something about you. The question is whether you understand what it tells others." As the sun dipped lower over Westbrook, Ethan felt the weight of that question settle heavily on his shoulders, knowing that courage had drawn a line, and now powerful eyes were watching how he would stand behind it. That night the town of Westbrook felt smaller than it ever had before. Word of the attempted attack had spread beyond school hallways and into diners, living rooms, and late evening phone calls. Ethan sat at the kitchen table while his father watched the local news in silence. The story was already fading from headlines, replaced by weather updates and traffic reports, but for Ethan it felt like the beginning of something that refused to settle. His phone buzzed just after 9 in the evening. A single message from Lily. "They are moving faster than we thought." Before he could respond, another message followed. "Dad got a call. It was not good." Ethan's stomach tightened. "What kind of call?" There was a long pause. Then her reply came through. "They said next time it will not be noise." The words sent a chill through him. He stood and walked out onto the back porch, the cool air brushing against his face. Across the quiet neighborhood, porch lights glowed softly. Everything looked peaceful. Too peaceful. He typed back. "Are you safe?" "Yes." But Dad is not waiting. As if summoned by the weight of that statement, the distant roar of multiple engines rolled faintly through the night air. Not one motorcycle. Several. The sound was low at first, almost mistaken for distant thunder, but it grew steadily louder. Ethan stepped to the edge of the porch, peering down the street. Headlights appeared at the far corner, one after another, cutting through the dark like a procession. The engines were synchronized, controlled, powerful. They did not race. They advanced. His father stepped outside behind him. "What is that?" Ethan did not answer. He already knew. The motorcycle slowed as they entered the neighborhood, not aggressively, but with undeniable presence. Neighbors peeked through curtains. A few porch lights flicked off as if instinct told them to observe quietly. The riders wore dark jackets, their posture straight, their formation deliberate. At the front rode Marcus Steele Thompson. He stopped directly across from Ethan's house. The engines idled in deep, rumbling harmony. Marcus removed his helmet and looked up toward the porch. Not with threat, with purpose. Ethan's heart pounded, but he did not retreat inside. He walked down the steps slowly, meeting Marcus halfway across the yard. "We received confirmation tonight," Marcus said, his voice steady over the hum of engines. "The men who came to the school are escalating. They believe a stronger message will shift leverage." Ethan swallowed. Against Lily, men with long memories were watching and calculating. But now, so was another force. And as the night settled over Westbrook, one thing became clear. The warning had been answered. The next move would not belong to reckless men alone. The silence that followed the shutdown of the engines felt heavier than the rumble itself. Neighbors remained behind curtains, shadows shifting in upstairs windows as the line of motorcycles stood like a dark wall along the quiet suburban street. Ethan could feel every eye on him, even if he could not see them. Marcus stepped slightly closer, lowering his voice so only Ethan and his father could hear. "This is not about intimidation," he said calmly. "It is about clarity. The men who made that call tonight believe pressure creates advantage. We are correcting that belief." Ethan's father folded his arms, protective but measured. "And what happens next?" Marcus held his gaze steadily. "Next, we make sure they understand there are lines that do not get crossed." Across the street, one of the riders lifted a hand to his ear, listening through a small communication device. He gave a subtle nod toward Marcus. No sudden movements. No aggression. Just coordination. Ethan realized this was not chaos fueled by emotion. It was organization fueled by loyalty. His phone buzzed again. "Lily, are they there?" He typed back. "Yes. Your dad is here too." A moment later another message appeared. "He will not let anything happen to you." Ethan looked up at Marcus, who seemed to sense the exchange without seeing the screen. "He carries a heavy responsibility," Ethan said quietly. Marcus's expression softened just slightly. Responsibility is not the same as power. Many men confuse the two. He turned toward the riders and made a small motion with his hand. Engines remained off. No one revved. No one postured. The message was not noise. It was presence. Headlights from a passing patrol car swept across the scene briefly before continuing down the block. Law enforcement had been notified. There was nothing illegal about men parking on a public street. The discipline in the formation ensured that. After several long minutes, Marcus faced Ethan again. They wanted to send fear into a school parking lot. That was reckless. Now they see that reckless actions create unified responses. Ethan nodded slowly. "And if they still push?" Marcus's eyes hardened, not with rage, but with resolve. "Then the response will not be symbolic." The weight of that statement settled in the cool night air. Ethan's father stepped forward. "My son acted on instinct. He did not sign up for any of this." Marcus inclined his head respectfully. "And that instinct is precisely why he will not stand alone in it." A breeze moved through the trees lining the street, rustling leaves like a whisper of shifting ground. One by one, riders adjusted their posture, ready but patient. Marcus extended his hand once more to Ethan's father. "We will keep watch tonight. Quietly. No disruption to your home. Just assurance." The handshake that followed was firm and understanding. Ethan looked down the street again, absorbing the surreal sight of disciplined riders forming a protective perimeter around an ordinary American neighborhood. Courage had drawn a line. Loyalty had answered it. Somewhere beyond the quiet glow of porch lights, men who believed fear could buy influence were learning that it could also summon something stronger. As Marcus walked back toward his motorcycle, he paused and looked over his shoulder at Ethan. "This is the last warning they will receive without consequence," he said evenly. And for the first time since the gunshot shattered the school parking lot, Ethan felt not just tension, but the solid presence of protection standing between him and whatever darkness might still be watching. The motorcycles remained stationed through most of the night, engines silent but presence unmistakable. Ethan barely slept. Each time headlights swept across his bedroom ceiling, he sat up, listening. Around 2 in the morning, the low murmur of voices drifted faintly from the street, followed by the soft crunch of boots on pavement. He moved to the window and carefully pulled the curtain aside an inch. 2 riders were walking the perimeter of the block, calm and methodical, not patrolling like aggressors, but standing watch like guardians. The sight steadied him more than he expected. By sunrise, the formation shifted. Engines turned over one by one, not in a roar, but in a disciplined sequence. The line of motorcycles rolled out of the neighborhood as quietly as they had arrived. Westbrook woke to trimmed lawns, morning joggers, and children waiting for school buses, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. But for Ethan, something fundamental had changed. At school, the atmosphere carried a different weight. Rumors had spread overnight. Students whispered about the motorcycles. Some exaggerated the number. Others claimed they had seen patches that made them nervous. Ethan ignored most of it. He focused instead on Lily. She arrived later than usual, escorted not by a visible convoy, but by a single black sport utility vehicle that parked discreetly across the street. Lily walked toward him with quiet determination. "My dad said they backed off last night," she told him in a low voice. One of the men who called tried to smooth things over. Ethan studied her expression. "Do you believe that?" She shook her head slightly. They do not like losing face. And showing up like that made them lose it. Before Ethan could respond, the familiar low rumble of a motorcycle approached the campus entrance. Not a formation this time. Just one. Marcus rode in alone, helmet on, posture steady. He did not enter the parking lot immediately. He circled once, observing, then parked near the main office. Teachers stiffened as he removed his helmet and walked inside. Minutes later, the principal emerged with him, expression serious but respectful. The message was subtle but unmistakable. The situation was being handled. During second period, Ethan was called to the guidance office. His pulse quickened as he stepped inside, half expecting trouble. Instead, he found Marcus seated across from the principal's desk. The principal spoke first, voice measured. Marcus requested a moment with you. It is voluntary. Ethan nodded and took a seat. Marcus leaned forward slightly. There has been contact from the other side, he said calmly. They claim the incident was an overreaction by younger men trying to prove themselves. They are offering distance in exchange for quiet. Ethan considered that. And do you believe them? Marcus's gaze sharpened. I believe in patterns. Reckless men repeat behavior unless corrected. This feels like they are testing whether we escalate or stabilize. Ethan frowned. What will you do? Marcus studied him carefully. That depends on whether they truly step back. If they do, this ends quietly. If they do not, it does not. The words were not dramatic. They were factual. Ethan realized this was the pivot point. The next move would determine whether Westbrook returned fully to normal or stepped deeper into a conflict that had brushed too close to his school. Marcus stood, placing a steady hand on Ethan's shoulder. You acted without calculation, he said. Now we calculate. As Ethan left the office, he sensed the fragile balance settling over the town. Somewhere beyond sight, men were weighing pride against consequence. And in that tense space between reaction and restraint, the future of everyone involved hung quietly, waiting for the next decision to be made. The fragile balance Marcus had described did not last long. By late afternoon, a subtle shift moved through Westbrook again, the kind that could not be seen but could be felt. Ethan sensed it the moment Lily's phone buzzed during lunch. She read the message and her expression changed, not to fear, but to tight awareness. They are not stepping back, she whispered. Ethan leaned closer. What happened? She showed him the screen. A photograph had been sent from an unknown number. It was taken from across the street that morning. It showed Ethan walking into school. The message beneath it read, "We see who stands close." No threats. No dramatic language. Just observation. Ethan felt a slow burn rise in his chest. They are not done, he said quietly. Lily shook her head. They want Dad to choose between escalating or backing down publicly. Pride is currency where he lives. Ethan understood that now. This was not about violence for its own sake. It was about reputation, leverage, perceived weakness. After school, Marcus arrived again, not alone this time, but with two senior members of the chapter. They did not gather in formation. They did not make noise. They stood near the football field as Lily approached her father. She handed him the phone without a word. Marcus studied the image carefully. His expression did not flare with anger. It hardened with decision. They are testing the perimeter, he said evenly. One of the senior writers spoke in a low voice. If we answer loud, they answer louder. Marcus nodded once. And if we answer weak? The writer did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Ethan stood a few steps away, aware that he was part of the equation now, whether he liked it or not. Marcus looked toward him. You understand what this means. Ethan did not look away. It means they think I am pressure. Marcus gave a short nod. And pressure can be redirected. Lily stepped closer to her father. I do not want anyone else hurt because of this. Marcus's gaze softened. Briefly when he looked at her. No one is being hurt, he said calmly. That is the point. We end this before it moves beyond messages. He turned back to Ethan. There will be a meeting tonight. Not here. Neutral ground. I will make it clear that the line was crossed once and will not be crossed again. Ethan felt the weight of what that implied. A confrontation. A negotiation where reputation mattered as much as reason. What if they refuse? Ethan asked. Marcus paused, then answered with quiet certainty. Then we remove their reason to test us again. The words were measured, not heated. Strategy, not emotion. The sun dipped lower over the field, casting long shadows across the grass. Students cleared out. Teachers locked doors. The campus emptied into evening calm. but beneath that calm tension stretched tight as wire. As Marcus mounted his motorcycle, he looked at Ethan one last time. "You stepped forward without knowing who stood behind her," he said. "Tonight they will learn exactly who does." The engine roared to life, deep and controlled. As the motorcycles pulled away toward a meeting that would decide whether Westbrook returned to peace or edged closer to open conflict, Ethan realized the moment in the parking lot had grown into something far larger than instinct. It had become a line drawn between fear and consequence, and the next few hours would decide who dared to cross it again. The meeting took place on the edge of town where the industrial district met open fields, a stretch of abandoned warehouses that had not seen regular business in years. Sodium lights flickered above cracked pavement, casting long shadows across steel doors and rusted loading docks. Marcus arrived first, his motorcycle rolling to a controlled stop near the center of the lot. Behind him, a small group of senior riders formed a loose line, not aggressive but unmistakably united. Across the empty space, another set of headlights approached slowly. 3 motorcycles and a dark sedan pulled in from the opposite side, engines idling low. The men who stepped off were older than the ones who had appeared at the school. Their posture carried experience rather than impulsive bravado. The leader removed his helmet and met Marcus halfway between the two groups. No raised voices. No sudden movements. Just 2 men who understood the cost of miscalculation. "You made your point," the opposing leader said evenly. Marcus's expression did not shift. A school parking lot was not a point. It was a mistake. The other man inclined his head slightly. Younger blood wanted to be seen. They overstepped. Marcus's voice remained calm but firm. They did more than overstep. They put children in the center of adult pride. That line does not get crossed. A quiet stretched between them, heavy but controlled. The men standing behind each leader watched closely, hands relaxed but ready. The opposing leader glanced toward his own riders before speaking again. "There will be no further contact with your family. No more messages. No more observation." Marcus held his gaze. "And the young men who thought that tactic was acceptable, they will understand the correction." The answer came without hesitation. "They already do." Marcus studied him carefully, weighing tone against posture, confidence against calculation. Reputation in their world traveled faster than any official statement. A reckless act could ignite cycles that lasted years, or it could be contained if handled decisively. Finally, Marcus gave a single nod. "This ends tonight." The other leader nodded in agreement. "It ends." The engines on both sides remained silent. No revving. No display. Just the mutual understanding that escalation would damage more than pride. After a moment, the opposing group stepped back toward their machines. One by one, engines turned over. The dark sedan pulled away first, followed by the motorcycles. Their taillights disappeared down the access road without fanfare. Marcus remained where he stood for several seconds longer, eyes scanning the horizon, listening to the night. Only when he was satisfied did he turn back toward his own riders. "It is settled," he said simply. No cheers followed. No celebration. Just quiet acceptance. As the motorcycles started and rolled out of the industrial lot, Marcus felt the tension ease from his shoulders. This had never been about dominance. It had been about boundaries. By the time he returned toward Westbrook, the town was quiet again, unaware that a decision made under flickering warehouse lights had redirected a potential storm. Back at home, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for news he could not see. He did not know the details of the meeting. He only knew that somewhere beyond his neighborhood, men who carried weight in darker spaces had chosen restraint over escalation. And that choice, fragile as it was, meant the line drawn in a school parking lot would not be crossed again. Morning arrived in Westbrook without sirens, without rumbling engines, without the electric tension that had gripped the town for days. The air felt lighter, as if something heavy had finally shifted out of sight. Ethan stepped onto his front porch before school, half expecting to see motorcycles lining the street again. Instead, there were only mail trucks, joggers, and the quiet rhythm of ordinary life. His phone buzzed just as he locked the front door. "Lily, it is over," she wrote. "Dad came home late. He said it is done." Ethan exhaled slowly, not realizing how tightly he had been holding his breath since the warehouse meeting. "Are you sure?" "Yes." They stood down. The younger ones were corrected. No more messages. No more watching. At school the change was subtle but real. Teachers moved with less strain in their voices. Students laughed more freely between classes. The nervous glances toward the parking lot faded. Even the security presence that had quietly increased began to relax. During lunch, Lily joined Ethan under the oak trees near the edge of campus. For the first time since the gunshot echoed across concrete, her shoulders were not tense. "He kept his word," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "He always intended to." Lily studied him for a moment. "You know this could have gone differently. If you had not moved. If you had not stepped in." Ethan shrugged slightly. "I did not think about anything except getting you down." She smiled faintly. "That is exactly why it mattered." Later that afternoon, Marcus arrived once more, but without an escort. He parked near the edge of the lot and waited rather than approaching immediately. Ethan noticed and walked over on his own. Marcus removed his helmet, his expression calm. "It is finished," he said plainly. "There will be no retaliation, no lingering tension." The other side understood the boundary. Ethan studied him. "And if they forget?" Marcus's eyes held steady confidence. "They will not forget." There was no arrogance in his tone, only assurance. After a brief silence, Marcus extended his hand. "You acted without asking who stood behind her. That kind of loyalty does not depend on reputation. It depends on character." Ethan shook his hand, feeling the firm grip of a man who carried weight without flaunting it. "I would do the same again," Ethan replied. Marcus's expression shifted slightly, not to sternness, but to approval. "Then keep that instinct. Just learn when to pair it with awareness." Lily approached then, slipping her hand through her father's arm. "Thank you," she said quietly to Ethan. "Not just for that day. For not backing away when things got complicated." Ethan gave a small nod. "I was never backing away." As Marcus mounted his motorcycle, he paused once more. "If you ever find yourself facing something bigger than you expected," he said evenly, "remember that courage does not mean standing alone." With that, he started the engine, not in a display of power, but in simple departure. The motorcycle rolled away down the street, sunlight catching the chrome before it disappeared around the corner. Ethan stood there for a moment, absorbing the quiet that followed. What had begun as a split-second decision in a school parking lot had rippled outward into meetings under industrial lights and lines drawn in silent neighborhoods. Now the ripple had settled. Westbrook returned to normal, but Ethan understood something new. Courage had weight, and when it was answered with loyalty instead of fear, it could reshape far more than a single afternoon. Weeks passed, and the tension that had once threatened to tear Westbrook apart slowly faded into memory. The quiet that followed the resolution felt almost too peaceful, like a deep breath taken after a long-held dive. Ethan could feel it in the air, the way people walked a little taller, the way the community began to settle back into its rhythms. He no longer flinched at the sound of an engine revving or the sight of a motorcycle passing through town. The weight of the unknown had been lifted, and now only the lessons remained. Marcus's words continued to echo in his mind. Courage does not mean standing alone. Ethan had learned that lesson firsthand. He had acted when others hesitated, not because he had all the answers, but because it was the right thing to do. And in that action, a line had been drawn, one that the town respected, whether they understood it fully or not. Lily had kept her distance from the chaos after that day. Her father's presence had given her a quiet kind of power, a strength that was not born of words but of what was unspoken. Ethan saw that in her now, a steadiness he hadn't noticed before. They met less often, but when they did, it was always with an understanding. No more secrets. No more shadows. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Ethan and Lily found themselves at the edge of the football field again, where everything had started. She handed him a small envelope, her fingers brushing his as she did. He opened it to find a small note and a key. It was the key to the garage on the edge of town, the one Marcus had once owned. The note simply read, "For when you are ready." Ethan turned to Lily. "What is this?" She smiled faintly. "It is a place to keep going. A place to make something new, just as we have." Ethan nodded, understanding more than the words could express. He had been given a chance not just to be a part of something bigger, but to take control of his own future. It was a chance to decide what he wanted to build in the world around him. As the days turned into months, the quiet moments between him and Lily became more important than the noise that had once surrounded them. The past, with its threats and lessons, had shaped them, but it did not define their futures. One evening, As Ethan stood in front of the garage, the sound of an engine roared down the street. It was Marcus, riding solo, his bike cutting through the silence like a reminder of everything that had happened. He stopped in front of the garage, removed his helmet, and gave Ethan a steady nod. He had not come to check in. He had come to pass something on. "You are ready," Marcus said simply. Ethan took a deep breath, knowing what it meant. He had been prepared for this moment not by the violence or the threats, but by the courage to step forward when everything had been uncertain. The key had unlocked more than just a door. It had opened the path to the future. As Marcus rode off into the distance, Ethan stood for a moment, the weight of what he had learned settling in. He wasn't alone, and now, he knew exactly what to do with the freedom he had earned. The town of Westbrook would never forget the day things almost fell apart, but it would also remember the day they were rebuilt by people who chose courage, loyalty, and the strength to move forward together.